Thank you very much. I've been in the field of ultrasound imaging for the last 25 years. And today with e-Scopics, what we want to do is to democratize the use of ultrasound, but to democratize it as a service. We also want to change the business model of ultrasound. And we believe it's going to be the ultimate digital transformation of ultrasound. Why? Because what we actually do is exactly what happened for the photo industry. In the photo industry, hardware became software, and we have now software running on our smartphones, which makes pretty pictures the same way hardware was making pretty pictures with the professional cameras. And this is exactly what we're going to do with ultrasound. We are going to transform these big machines into a piece of software that you can download on your computer to emulate an ultrasound system. So why do we do all this? Obviously, we know that diagnosis is a bottleneck in the patient pathway. We've seen that with COVID. We had to transform PCR tests into home-based tests in order to sustain the volume of diagnoses that had to be done. And for imaging, it's exactly the same thing. There's an increased request for imaging in the diagnosis phase, and we have a shortage for ultrasound of sonographers or a shortage of radiologists. So what happened already for ultrasound is that ultrasound started to penetrate upstream and downstream this workflow, and we see now ultrasound in emergency medicine and anesthesiology. It's so true that point-of-care ultrasound is today what drives the growth of the ultrasound market, with 8% CAGR compared to 3% for radiology, cardiology, or OBGYN. And this is done through miniaturization of ultrasound, which you see some products here. Butterfly Networks is probably the best known product. And when you do shrink a product, when you do miniaturize a technology, you lose performance. And of course, you can have affordability and accessibility for ultrasound, but still, it remains a modality that requests education to be interpreted. And what e-Scopics is doing is actually not miniaturizing, but dematerializing an ultrasound machine, putting the ultrasound engine as a software, and the software now runs on the computer, the tablet, or on your smartphone with the increased computational capabilities that these devices have today. And what are the benefits of doing so? You can now retrieve the performance that you had with premium ultrasound, and amongst these performance, what I'm referring to is radiomics, imaging biomarkers, measurement of tissue parameters that will allow direct diagnosis of the tissue. And here is an example of the stiffness of a liver, which is exactly correlated to the fibrosis content of the liver. So in a way, radiomics is the ultimate way you can democratize the use of ultrasound because you no longer need expertise to be interpreted. So how are we growing and what is our strategy compared to all these miniaturized versions of ultrasound which are pushing technology towards primary care, and of course the adoption is difficult. We are going to go from the bottom up. We are going to first democratize the use of ultrasound amongst different clinical specialties. We will start with diabetology and gastroenterology, moving to pulmonology and rheumatology, and then move to primary care. For the example of a first use case of our technology, it's an app for chronic liver disease. Chronic liver disease is the development of fibrosis in the liver due to fat today. This is called NASH, generating a lot of healthcare costs, obviously, but what you really want to follow in this disease is the development of fibrosis. And what we propose is a complete shift in the workflow that a patient goes through. We anticipate that tomorrow, we know actually today that more than half of the type 2 diabetes patients have fatty liver, and that 20% of them are going to develop fibrosis. So it's not possible to have all these patients go to the hepatology for diagnosis. We have to integrate a tool earlier on to do triage, and this is exactly what we propose with our first product, our first application, to give the diabetologist and the primary care an ultrasound tool capable of measuring fibrosis and monitoring the evolution of fibrosis in order to select the patient that are then going to go to the hepatologist. So basically, we are replacing two exams, two devices, a big ultrasound system and a fibrosis measurement tool called FibroScan into a single device that we will give to the diabetologist. Sorry. The first app is called Hepatoscope. For lack of a better word, I mean, it shows the evolution of the state of the liver. And here again, the go-to-market strategy is going to be in three phases. First, to the pharma industry that is developing drugs for NASH with a fee-for-service. Then to the diabetologist and gastroenterologist that will prescribe these drugs in the future, screening their patient with hepatoscope, and then to the general practitioner. We have a business model based on a SaaS business model, obviously, with a significant clinical marketing activity to support the acquisition of new customers and a low churn rate in that business model. And we have already gotten under the radar of some pharma companies that are developing drugs for NASH. We actually obtained a seed funding from Gilead Science when we started the company, a seed funding on which we added non-dilutive funding from government funding. And we intend to demonstrate the medico-economical benefit of our solution, putting ultrasound earlier in the chain with a multi-center clinical trial in Europe and in the US. The technology is much broader than just a liver application, as you have understood, and it was identified by some industry partners, and we actually closed the licensing deal at the end of last year for a very specific application of ultrasound in the OR. So we did all this with this funding, and today we are looking for 5 million additional funding in order to proceed with the multi-center clinical evaluation that I talked to you about, but also reach commercial traction within a limited territory. We want to put in place a 100% digital commercialization strategy. The doctor would get the probe through the mail and it would download the software on its computer, but also move to two other applications, and I've talked about them: pulmonology, being able to develop biomarkers for fibrosis and edema, and also rheumatology, to develop a biomarker on inflammation of the joints to diagnose polyarthritis. The team is an experienced team. We went through the creation of a business. My previous company was called Supersonic Imagine. We went from inception to IPO, and then the company was sold to Hologic. And we also have a very diversified board, which helps us both in the clinical strategy and also the signal processing technology that we are putting inside this software, which changes completely the way we do ultrasound today. So as a conclusion, I think through this first FDA-cleared application, we've shown that the concept of dematerializing ultrasound can be done. We have a first product. It's a real-time imaging mode. It preserves the capability of premium ultrasound in it. And with this product, we want to now start to demonstrate the clinical traction, the commercial traction of this product with a platform leveraging the concept of a software-based system, namely a completely service-based business model, but also move to the other applications, rheumatology and pulmonology, as well as establishing key strategic partnerships with industry to develop additional verticals with this technology. And the recent example I told you was a multi-million deal for the licensing of our technology. I thank you very much for your attention. I brought the probe with me, and I have the software on my Mac. So if ever you want to have a liver scan, you're welcome to join me in the breakout room. Thanks very much.